Hey guys, it's the History Nerd here with a sort of review thing of Atlantic Fleet. This hit Steam pretty recently, and it's a World War II naval strategy game by Killerfish Games. I believe this is based on a iOS mobile game called Pacific Fleet, and then they've sort of made it more in line with a PC game and released Atlantic Fleet. So what is this all about? Well, it's about the Atlantic Fleet, or the Atlantic actions in World War II. Between the Germans and the British. So we've got a few options here. We can do training missions, which will explain the gist of how the game is played. I do recommend doing the tutorial for some of these. Movement, gunnery, introduction, things like that. These things are pretty clear on how to figure out how to do it. Basically, you watch someone play the game once, and you know how to move your ships within reason. You know how to aim your guns, all those sorts of things. Torpedoes, I would highly recommend doing the tutorial for, and the aircraft as well. Anti-submarine warfare, that gets pretty clear, even if it is kind of ridiculous. And I don't necessarily mean ridiculous in a bad way, just we'll see what goes on. So if you're interested in learning how the game works, I would definitely recommend the torpedoes in the aircraft. In the tutorial, everything else you can kind of figure out on your own. I was able to figure out on my own, and I said to myself, you know what, we don't need to worry about doing the tutorials. And then I realized I have no idea how to bomb things or torpedo things, and in a naval game, that comes in handy. We've also got a whole grouping of just single battles. So here we can see while on anti-submarine patrol in the western approaches, HMS Courageous is spotted and stalked by U-29. Actions off, whatever. Like there's a bunch of preset battles here that you can go through. We've also got the campaign, which, if we continue my Royal Navy campaign, you can see I've completed all 19 missions with 3 stars. Don't mean to brag or nothing, but that's not bad. You can see my renown down there at the bottom is pretty freaking high. And so basically, these are just single engagements that you can go through. Once you do 1, you unlock 2 and 3 and 4 and whatever until you get down to, oh my. Well, I just realized how to scroll through this window. Left click, scroll down, and there are many more missions. So we'll come back to that to show you guys how the game actually works, how the combat actually works. And then we've got the Battle of Atlantic. So if we take a look at this screen, we'll take a look. This is a Atlantic campaign that I'm currently working through. I believe the bar at the top represents convoys. As the Royal Navy, it's our job to protect them. As the Germans, it's their job to go out and sink them. We've got, what do we got? If we go into our main base in the United Kingdom, here's our defensive fleet. I was recently engaged in combat, so here we've got 2 cruisers that are getting themselves repaired, and then based upon the amount of renown you earn in the campaign, you can come through here and purchase ships. There are a lot of ships, and as you can see, as you get higher up, Queen Elizabeth class battleship, for instance, costs 62,000 renown. We've got 28, and I mean, there are a lot of classes of ships in this game. Like a lot. So, and then in the campaign, some of them are dated. So, for instance, I think we're in December of 1939. That cruiser I was looking at, the Crown Colony class light cruiser, isn't available until the first week of May 1940. So, that basically covers all the different game modes. We'll just back ourselves out of that. What else have we got? We got an options menu. There's quite a lot of stuff going on here. Tons of different options. Longer start range, limited visibility, enemy ships can disengage. whole bunch of stuff you can turn on, you can turn off, graphical settings, all that sort of thing, which is fine. I mean, it's great. It's kind of a hard game to explain because it plays out sort of like a 2D tactical turn-based game, but it's all in 3D. And honestly, I think the best thing to do would be to show you guys what I mean. We're going to continue in this, and we're actually going to go ahead and do this mission that I didn't even know existed. So let's take a look. What are we coming up against? We are coming up against 2 cruisers, 2 torpedo boats, and 2 freighters. Now, in this view, or in this style, you can only bring in, or in these, not this style, in this campaign. So not in the main, not in the other campaign, the grand campaign as we'll call it, where it's you against the Germans. You can bring in to the fight, as far as I can tell, as many ships as you want. You're limited in the game to having 30 ships in your fleet. But you know, if you get attacked and you've got 30 ships defending that point, you will have all 30 ships in the combat. In this section, in this campaign, you can bring in 3 ships. So taking a look at this, we've got 2 cruisers, 2 torpedo boats, and 2 freighters. The freighters, you don't gotta worry about. If they can shoot you, it's pretty weak, and you gotta get kind of close to them. So let's not even worry about that. So we got 2 cruisers and 2 torpedo boats. If we take a look at my fleet, I've got the Warspite, which is a battleship, the Renown, which is a battlecruiser, and the Australia, which is a heavy cruiser, I think. But what we've also got is 108,000 renown. So we might as well look at maybe getting something, you know, worth our money. It's pretty tough to say no to a Nelson or a King George. Honestly, it looks like we can also snag ourselves some American ships as well, which might not be a bad idea. Let's see. I think we've already got one of those. We could get the Hood. We could get an aircraft carrier. I think what we're going to go for, though, because we are the Royal Navy, we might as well get ourselves a King George V, which is going to be a much better battleship than the one I'm currently rolling with. So we can choose then, you know, which ship do you want to command? I think in this case it makes sense to have King George V as the ship we're going to have. So let's go ahead, purchase that sucker, and then get ourselves set up for attacking these ships. And I think King George V, the Warspite, and the Renown is going to be good. We'll leave the Australia and the Huron kicking around. I like keeping a destroyer around in case we run into submarines, because it's always good to have anti-submarine capabilities. You don't want to be rolling into a pack of U-boats with nothing but battleships, you know what I'm saying? In this case, we don't got to worry about it, so let's just go ahead and get in onto the attack. So here's the main screen. We can see the Germans, in this case, have the initiative, so they're starting the attack. And here come their cruisers rolling in. And it's turn-based. So all the German ships go, then all the British ships go. And it's back and forth like that until there are no ships left. And there's their other torpedo boat, which, you know, shouldn't be too much of a concern. Our ship here has taken a little bit of a pounding, but we seem to be doing okay. So, what do you do with this game? First off, you can go underwater, and that is not only helpful for seeing torpedoes, it's also kind of neat to sit there and watch the ship sink. And yes, you can watch the ship sink. So, here we are in command of the King George V, a very big and nice looking battleship. In the game, you start off controlling your ship in your movement section. So no matter what, you're going to have to move. Ships can't just stay still. I mean, obviously you could adjust your speed down to stop and then continually click through your move turns until you come to a stop. But I don't know why you would ever want to do that with a ship. I've seen some people doing it in like World of Warships, and it baffles me that they just stop their ships in the middle of the ocean and start shooting. What we're going to want to do is maneuver our ships to actually get good shots on those ships over there. So we're going to want to get a bit of a turn to port, and going full speed, that seems to be okay. We'll turn. So now we're in our fire phase. So we can see the enemy fleet over there, and currently our guns are set to fire straight forward, which isn't very useful. So let's see what we can find. We've got a torpedo boat there. We've got a large freighter there. We've got a large freighter over there. We've got the Karlsruhe there. We got another torpedo boat, and we should have the other cruiser back there, the Königsberg. So we will target the Karlsruhe because, obviously, they're the biggest, or they're not the biggest, they're one of the biggest ships there. We're in a battleship. We want to sink this cruiser as quick as we possibly can. So, now that we've got that ship targeted, we can cycle through and select our ammunition. So on the King George V, we've got 14-inch armor-piercing and high-explosive shells, as well as 5¼ inch armor-piercing and high-explosive shells, which would be our secondary batteries. So those guys there. As you can see, when you target a ship, and you get in nice and close to take a look at your guns, the guns that are going to be firing are pointing in that direction. The guns that aren't going to be firing are not pointed in that direction. So these secondary batteries here can't get a line on that cruiser, but you can see all of our main batteries can. So we're probably going to want to go with our 14-inch armor-piercing shells. So once we've decided on our ammunition, we take a look at our target. Here is the Karlsruhe. It's going 16.7 knots. I'm not sure what this number means, and I don't know what this elevation means in brackets. What I do know is the gunnery crew is suggesting that they're an elevation of 10.4 degrees out. So we come over here and we take a look at this nice little spinny thing here, and we can get ourselves set up so that our shells are 10.4. I'm going to say this right away. The interface in this game, it does feel like it's designed for a touchscreen, and the aiming in particular gets annoying because you're just clicking on this and moving it up and down with your mouse. So trying to get exact numbers, sometimes it's easy. Sometimes, you get the little twitch just right and you get it on the 10.4, no problem. Sometimes you're going between the, 10th or 20th of a degree trying to get it right. And remember now, this is just an estimate. So this is our first shot. If we go into the tactical view, we can see we got no shots fired. This is just our first round. So we're not sure if this is going to hit. This is just our gunnery crew's first best guess at the distance of that ship. So let's go ahead, fire our guns. I'm going to go on a limb and suggest that maybe, just maybe, that was an accurate range. So with that broadside, we have completely removed the Karlsruhe in one shot. So she's dead. They are not... I mean, obviously, it's sinking. There's really not much more to say about that. So let's go back and select the Renown. And we're going to want to do kind of the same thing we did with the King George. We're going to want to put in a port turn and a little bit of a move. Oh, that wasn't the ship I was controlling. I was actually controlling this battleship, the Queen Elizabeth class, I do believe. The Warspite. So, yeah, might as well address the elephant in the room. The interface, it's functional and it works. But there's little quirks that sometimes get annoying. For instance, I don't think if I go over here... okay. So that's just me not being observant enough. Up in the top left corner is always going to be the ship that you're controlling and the speed that it's going. There's no real way to tell which is which other than the name. But that, I guess that isn't really functionally bad. Let's see what's going on here. She's headed to the bottom quite quickly. Let's go back. So, with the Queen Elizabeth, we're going to want to target another ship. And I'm thinking the other cruiser, the Königsberg back there, is probably a good idea to target as well. So again, same deal with the Queen Elizabeth class. We've got the 15-inch armor-piercing and high explosives and 4.5-inch armor-piercing and high explosives. We can also control the spread of the shot. I mean, if we take a look, it's probably only going to show the shots per ship. But we can control the spread so that we can get a tighter spread or a wider spread. Initially, when we're at a distance and, we haven't really engaged any of the ships yet, I like keeping the spread wide so that even if our elevation estimates are out by a couple of degrees, or a couple of tenths of a degree. If we're out by a couple of degrees, we ain't hitting anything. But if we're out by like a 10th or a 20th, we might still, with a wide spread, have a couple shots that still manage to hit. So let's go ahead. The gunnery estimate is 14.3. So let's get that dialed in, and let's give that a fire. And that was another good hit. We didn't sink it, but we probably did some decent damage to it. I'm not too concerned about that. Let's go to the Renown, and let's get her doing a port turn as well. Like so. And then taking a look, we could probably just make this torpedo boat's day horrible. Are we going to get all guns? We could get all guns on that cruiser. And honestly, that might not be a bad idea. It's the largest ship we've got to face. If we can sink it this turn, then, we're just stuck fighting 2 torpedo boats and some freighters, which is not a concern for 2 battleships and a battlecruiser. So let's get this dialed in at 16.7. I mean, unless, of course, they launch torpedoes, which are not the easiest things to dodge. No, 16.7, please. This is what I mean. 16.7. There we go. Armor piercing shells, and again, we got 4.5 inch or 4.5 inch secondary shells as well. And the nice thing, once you get this dialed in, if you swap between the two, then that doesn't change. Obviously, when you go to the secondaries, that will change because that must be what that is. Because they're different guns. So I would bet that that's our secondary range, and that's our primary guns. Let's just load up and fire our primary guns. And we were a bit too aggressive on that. In come the enemy shells, and they've completely missed. And you see, this is what I mean by we're not really that concerned about the torpedo boats. Sure, they do have more than one gun, but they're little guns. And they shouldn't really be doing too much damage at all to the heavily armored ships that I've got. So if we take a look at this, we know we're in a good position to get our broadsides in, so we'll just move straight ahead. And we're good. Now let's acquire the other cruiser. We can see that the elevation suggestion there is a 13. So we'll get the 13 dialed in, launch our shells, and that was just a little bit under. That's okay. So we'll go ahead and move this guy up. Now, we could continue with firing at the cruiser back there, but let's face it, this torpedo boat is coming in much, much closer. We'll have a better chance of hitting that because it's a tiny little boat. I'm switching to the high explosive shells because, I mean, these are 15-inch shells. They shouldn't have too much of a problem cutting through destroyer armor. Now, the thing is, we haven't shot at this ship yet. So, again, this is coming back to, like, best guess of fire. So we're hoping this works. We don't really know. And yeah. That was pretty much a good estimate from our gunnery crew. And now this torpedo boat's gonna sink because he just had his day wrecked. Let's go ahead, move the Renown forward. And I'm thinking the cruiser back there is still our best bet for this guy. So we want it at 14.3, 14.3, 14.3. 14.3. 14.3. This. There we go. That's what I mean. Yeah, we got one hit. That's not too bad. Now the Königsberg is getting itself into a position to give us broadsides. And I would imagine the second torpedo boat's going to be doing the same. And then the freighters are just going to try and get out of Dodge as quick as they possibly can. We might as well just continue moving in a straight line here. And 12.4? We can do that. 12.4. Fired up. And if this hits, that should... see, with the ship turning, with us moving, there's a lot of factors that come into deciding, you know, what we're going to hit and if we're going to hit at all. Let's boost this up to 12 and see if we can get rid of the second torpedo boat. Oh, God, come on. There we go. And fire. Too much. Too much. We'll learn. Moving along, we still have a very nice clear broadside on that guy with just a slight elevation increase and fire. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. He's looking like he's getting lower in the water there, but he's still maneuvering. And that lucky torpedo boat. All right. Well, I think what we're going to want to do here is do a bit of a turn to starboard. We still have all of our guns trained on the cruiser. The reason why I want to get a little bit of a turn to starboard is so we can, you know, chase down the freighters once we're done with their escorts. So let's get that up to 12.9 and fire. And that takes care of the cruiser pretty freaking quickly. And there she goes. Let's get another turn to port going on here. And we're lined up on the torpedo boat nicely. You're telling me it's going to be an 8.7. I will oblige. That is far too short. And then let's get another turn to starboard. And hopefully you're not moving quick enough to run into that guy. But I think my battle cruiser is a bit quicker than my battleship. We'll switch this. Actually, what we'll do is we'll start hitting down these freighters, because we got to sink these suckers as well. And honestly, a full broadside of 14 or 15-inch high explosive shells should do quite a lot of damage to a freighter. You're telling me 10.5? So we'll get her down to 10.5. We'll get a broadside out. Yeah, that was just a little bit too high. I won't hold it against you guys, though. Alright. So looking at this, we're still going to be pulling maybe even a more aggressive turn to port here. We might lose. No, we still have... let's see. That is the torpedo boat there. We still got a full broadside. So let's switch over to high explosive shells and get this dialed into a 10.5. No, no, no. There. Fire. And that was a little too generous. Knowing that the Renown is going to keep turning, I think instead we'll pull our Queen Elizabeth a little bit further forward, and then let the Renown keep his turn going. 10.3. So let's get this dialed into 10.3. High explosive shells. It's pretty good. We did a lot of damage. We did a lot of fire making. I like it. We'll keep getting you to turn. And you're now telling me 8.9. Whoop. 9, 8.9. Close enough. Looks like 9.1 may have been a better bet. This torpedo boat is in a world of hurt. And surprisingly, you might say, the torpedo boat hasn't launched any torpedoes. Why not? I don't know. If you're going up against things like submarines, yes, torpedoes get launched a lot. But I haven't really seen a lot of ship-based torpedoes launched in my couple of days' experience with the game. See, that was just absolutely spectacular. And I've got to say, now that I've got a real battleship in my little task force, because as nice as the Queen Elizabeth is, she's not really a real battleship. You know what I mean? The devastation of the rounds is incredible. Let's see, 10.4 you say. Oh my god. This is, yeah, the most frustrating part of this game. A little bit shy. Little bit shy. We should be nice and clear. I'd like to attempt for a broadside on that guy, 9.7. So we'll just bump that up a little bit. There we go. And fire. And I mean, that easily took care of him. And we're probably fine. We might want to pull a turn on the battleship next turn, but we'll see. We've got tons of ships here for just one freighter. I mean, we shouldn't really have much of a difficulty finishing this off. Did we get one hit? I don't think we did. Might as well get you doing your turn now. And what do we got? 11.4? Fire. And you just continue on. And we should hopefully get this guy finished off quickly. So 12. And fire. And I'd be surprised if that guy lasts longer than a turn or two. What do we got? 10.6. There. Well, 10.7. F it. I don't feel like being fiddly. Somehow. Nope. She's dead. So that's good. And at the end of the battle, you can feel free to go around, take a look at whatever ships are left up on the surface, and you can just, you know, watch them go under. So yeah, we'll finish that off. As we can see, we earned 36,360 renown from that battle, and the Warspite got a little bit of damage. In this view here, so in this, we'll just go back. In this mission, right, like, damage doesn't really matter. So if I were to go into mission 21 now, which if we take a look at it, is us going up against a cruiser, a light cruiser, and a destroyer. The Warspite, which took a little bit of damage, she don't have no damage anymore. If we go back to the Battle of Atlantic and continue our campaign, obviously, as is clear here, damage is a thing, and you want to make sure you get it repaired. The currency in this mission, or in this campaign as well is just sinking enemies. So initially, you don't really have much going on to like, you don't have any way to generate your renown to build up your fleet. You just gotta sink ships, which can turn into a situation where you just can't win, right? Like if you get a disastrous situation, then it's the end, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, campaign's got to end somehow, right? So yeah, I haven't really played around with this too much. Obviously, I'm in the first week of December 1939, and you start in September, so I haven't really played around with this too much. But it seems like an interesting idea. You don't really have much of a control over much when it comes to the campaign, though. Like, you can't take land or anything like that. It's just slogging it out until 45, I'm guessing. But it's a nice sort of, it's a nice representation of being in control of either the Royal Navy or the Kriegsmarine during World War II. Now, why have you been showing off just the Royal Navy there, history nerd? Because, quite honestly, in World War II, they had far better surface ships. So that's kind of why I've been playing around with them. I've done a little bit with the German Army, or the German Navy, and, I mean, let's face it, other than a few fancy magical battleships, which you're not going to get to without grinding, they don't really have a good surface fleet. And I discovered that in this campaign mode. If we go to my German one and continue it, right, I'm stuck on level 6, because I've got to go in and hit 2 British submarines. I don't think I've got much in the way of renown, and all of my ships have been sunk. So it's kind of it's a dead campaign. I guess we could start a new one. That's fine. And we can go through and show you guys the German Navy. So obviously you start off and you're looking at, like, the Scharnhorst, the Bismarck, the H-39, Deutschland class heavy cruisers, Admiral Hipper class heavy cruisers. But once you start getting down into, like, the light cruisers, and particularly with the early game, the destroyers, my God, Germany, for the same renown cost, you can get 1934, 1934A, 1936. Like, basically, to start with, for the campaign, you're starting with crappy destroyers. If we go, and we'll just go ahead and exit this, that's fine, and take a look at, say, the British. Let's get out of the battleships and battle cruisers and aircraft carriers and escort carriers and light cruisers and all of that thing. If we go down to your destroyers, the first destroyer you're going to be using is a tribal, and these tribals are just a much better ship. They've got 10 degrees more range. So the maximum fire range of the 1934 destroyers on Germany is, I think it was 30 degrees. The tribals got 40. They got better guns. They're just better in every way. I'm not saying I wouldn't be interested in going in and doing a German campaign, but because of the differences in the fleet structure, the British are just hands down better. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think it would be pretty accurate to say, especially at the early stages of World War II, that the British had a much better surface fleet and just a higher quality of ship than the German Navy. But both sides are completely playable, and, it could be an interesting thing to do a German Battle of the Atlantic with something like nothing but U-boats, and seeing how you succeed in that. So anyway, guys, this has been my look at Atlantic Fleet, and I don't know, it's a fun game to sit down and play a battle or two of, but it's the little minor annoyances that start piling up where you're like, hey, I want to play this game for maybe, I don't know, an hour, maybe 2 hours. Just sit down, mess around with the fleet, and then by like mission 3 you're like, okay, I get this. There's no auto resolve, so if you have a fleet of like a battleship and 2 battle cruisers going up against 4 transports, you're gonna have to fight that out, and that can get a little bit tiresome. Because, I mean, obviously shots don't always hit, those freighters are just gonna run away, but for the $11, I think it was Canadian, it's not a bad little game. And I'm even going to put this out there. If you guys are interested in seeing a Battle of the Atlantic campaign, let me know. I'm not going to lie. My first go round, I'm tempted to go with the Royal Navy. But if the demand is so high for the Kriegsmarine that I just, that's what people want to see, we'll give it a shot. Don't expect success. We can give it a try. So let me know if you guys are interested in seeing that. And, yeah, I think it's a pretty good game. And it's not a review copy. This wasn't sent to me by the developers. I checked this out based on suggestions in comments, and I don't mind it at all. I wouldn't say it's the world's greatest naval tactical game, but it certainly is fun, and it's got a very functional look. I wouldn't say this game is beautiful. The water's pretty nice. The ship models are fairly good, but there's nothing about this that is eye-catching and mind-blowing visually, but that being said, it does its job well, and all of the ships do look, a little different between each other, not within the same class, obviously, but all the different classes are relatively modeled nicely, and really, my issues with this game are just minor things. The interface can get a little tricky. I realize it's based on touchscreen, and so that's gonna play into it, but like the selecting of range specifically gets really annoying when you're playing this game for more than like a battle or 2. Other than that, yeah, I like it. I'm glad to see games like this coming out. I think there really is a space out there that is not being filled when it comes to naval strategy games. I really can't think of too many. So it's good to see, and it's functional, it's fun. Aside from a couple of little minor annoyances, it's a great game. So we're going to leave it there. Like I say, if you guys want to see a series, let me know in the comments. And that'll do it. So thumbs up if you have enjoyed this video. Leave your comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, jokes, musings, what have you below. Thank you all very, very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.